Hi everyone, I'm Benjamin and welcome to my book club. Today, let's talk about these two Robert Heinlein books and try and decide why I only liked one of them. So, I've just recently finished both Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein and The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, also by Robert Heinlein. And just right off the bat, I really liked both these covers. These editions have been really nice, and I've really enjoyed them. But I won't leave you sitting in suspense for too long. So, which one of these didn't I enjoy? One of them I thought was a very good, 8, 9 out of 10, and the other one I fell around a 2 or a 3 for me. I didn't enjoy it very much at all. So the one I didn't enjoy was Starship Troopers. Now, maybe it's my fault coming into it with wrong expectations. Obviously having seen the movie, and, the title, Starship Troopers. But let's get into it, shall we? So just like in the movies, you've got the bugs, this alien threat that is an existential threat to humanity. They're throwing rocks and asteroids at the planet, and we have to go deal with them. And again, just like in the movie, we follow Johnny Rico as he enlists in the military and goes and starts his journey in the military. We follow him through boot camp and officer training and his deployment as part of the ground-pounding Starship Troopers, the mobile infantry. These super soldiers with jetpacks and small nuclear weapons and just an arsenal of weaponry and technology attached to them. And that's about all we really do. I have to say, it's a very slow book, I found. I came into it expecting more of an action book, but really there's only 2 action scenes I can really remember. One close to the start and one close to the end. It's as different from the movie as Night is Today. The movie is very clearly, very loosely based on it, and I think even maybe a satire of this book. This book is... I've heard people say that it promotes fascism, and I'm not sure if I agree with that, but it definitely has a strong political opinion on that sort of thing, and on the opinion of duty and the position of someone's life in a military society, and how that, betters someone and makes them a better person. And Robert Heinlein obviously was in the Navy, and that does shine through. This book is probably quite close to a real military person's life. It's a lot of training, a lot of drills, and not much action, because that's probably very true to life. But what it doesn't do is make a very entertaining book, I find. We follow Rico through basic training, and I didn't hate that bit, but it does go on and on and on. And we finally finish basic training, Rico gets deployed, and then almost immediately goes off to officer training school, and that's basically the rest of the book. We do, two-thirds of the book is the basic training, a few pages of deployment, almost 90% of the rest of the book is officer training school, and then we have a little action scene at the end. And I just didn't enjoy it. I kept expecting it to go somewhere. I loved the world it set up. Heinlein uses these training scenes and these characters to deliver long political sort of treatises on man and how military service makes them better and more valued in a society. And it comes off as very honest in here, whereas in the movie, obviously, it came off kind of a bit satirical. But the world is really interesting to me. The bugs are great. The idea of this military society, there's sections where he's on shore leave on a planet, and that planet sounds really interesting. But we just don't see a lot of that in this book. There's not many characters in this book that I look back on and feel anything really for. And yeah, it didn't land with me at all. Which was a shame, because I was expecting to really enjoy it. Because just before reading this one, I finished The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and this is one of my favourite books I've read now. Again, it's got a lot of long political treatises, but it seems to be coming at it from a different angle, whereas Starship Troopers seem to be coming at it from a fairly conservative, military-focused style. This is more anarchist libertarianism, which again is, not my jam. But it made more sense in this book. In this book, we follow Manuel Garcia, Manny, as he lives his life on the moon in the late 21st century, where the moon has become a penal colony. Criminals are shipped up to the moon, where it's expected that they'll grow wheat and food and algae, which will get almost entirely shipped back down to Earth. And in return, they get oxygen sometimes, and very little else. But they can't escape, because after you've spent 6 months or so on the moon, your body's adapted to the gravity there, and now being on Earth is a huge strain on your heart and your respiratory system and your circulatory system. And it's really interesting because the moon has been a penal colony for so long that there are people there now that were born there. They haven't committed any crime, they haven't done anything wrong, but they're also still stuck there, and they're under the same conditions as everyone else. The warden rules from high above very little, doesn't have a very big impact on the day-to-day running of things. As long as the shipments are going out, he doesn't seem to care. He has his sort of army of military police deal with things on his behalf. Being a penal colony, it has a very limited set of skilled technicians. So Manny is one of the only computer technicians on the whole moon. And so it's up to him to fix the warden's computers when they begin to malfunction. And during this, he's realized that this big central computer that manages almost everything on the moon has, at some point, through either an error in programming or just through the continued addition of more and more resources and whatnot, has become self-aware. And he's named him Mike, after Mycroft Holmes. And he talks with Mike, and there's some great parts of the book where it's just him and Mike talking. Mike is trying to develop a sense of humour. He doesn't understand jokes. Mike is constantly asking Manny to rate his jokes and let him know which ones are good ones and which ones are bad ones. And there's a great bit where Manny tells him, some jokes are great when done once and then never again. And I won't spoil it, but I really think that phrase is key to understanding, or at least my understanding of the end of the book. And the ending of the book is fantastic. I loved it. It's a bit melancholic at points. Again, the book is a bit slow, this one, same as the last Heinlein. But here it fits more, I feel, because here it's a long process. So Manny meets up with this resistance movement on the moon, and sort of unwillingly, by accident and kind of against his will, ends up becoming one of the leaders of this resistance movement, along with some people he knows and respects, along with Mike, the computer. And the book is telling the story of this resistance movement growing from this small group of dissatisfied citizens to eventually a real threat to the Warden and to Earth's control of the moon. And the entire time there's Manny and Mike up here at the top of it running things. And you get a very deep insight into the organisation of this group as it goes through. And I think that's why the sort of long political treatises fit more in this one, because at its heart, this is a book that you expect to be political. It is about like a political coup. There are some action scenes in this book, probably not more than there was in Starship Troopers. And again, the action scenes are fantastic in this. The views you get into the society on the moon and the sort of family structures they have are very fascinating as well. Due to being a penal colony, the ratio of men to women is drastically in the favour of men. I think it's 2 to 3, 4 men to every woman. And so, like polygamy and big group marriages have become the norm. Manny's a part of something called a line marriage, where you are in the same family, and you add new, younger husbands and wives. So then as the older ones die, you're still in the same marriage, still the same family. And the benefit to this is that means they get to hold on to their estates and their, like, what wealth they do have, because they're not passing it down as inheritance. It's just still the same marriage. And that sort of, it's kind of fascinating to look into a world where that sort of relationship becomes beneficial and makes sense. The book is written, and the characters talk in sort of a different, not a different language, but a different way of speaking. A lot more efficient, I suppose. There's a lot of unnecessary, like conjoining words that have been removed. It feels, it reads kind of like a mix between Russian English. In my head, that's how I always read it, in a Russian accent. Very brisk and to the point. In both this book and in Starship Troopers, I found the portrayal of women to be a little bit lacking. In both books, the women kind of both have fairly decent female characters that seem to kind of drop off at a certain point and are both treated as kind of like the prize for the heroic male lead. Maybe that's just from the time they were written, but it was a little bit disappointing, especially in Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I really liked the female lead, and she just kind of seems to drop off near the end of the book once she has served her purpose of getting together as the love interest. But ignoring that, as I said, solid 7, 8, or 9 out of 10. I can't. It's a bit too fresh to really place in my mind right now. But I really enjoyed it and really would recommend it. And Starship Troopers, I'm afraid, it didn't land with me. It wasn't what I was expecting. It didn't follow. It wasn't fast enough. It wasn't fun enough. It was kind of a slog for me. So like a 2 or 3 out of 10 for this one, I think. So I know Heinlein has some more books, specifically Stranger in a Strange Land, I believe is his most famous one. So I'd love if someone could tell me if it's closer to Moon is a Harsh Mistress or further on the Starship Troopers side, so I can decide if it's something that I really want to try and read. But yeah, that's my rambling on these books. I'd love if you could jump in the comments and let me know what you thought of the books. I'm sure other people are going to have a drastically different reading of Starship Troopers than I did. And I'm sure people are going to have a different reading of Moon is a Harsh Mistress than I did. And that's kind of what's fascinating about these books and why I want to foster these discussions. I'd love if you could leave me a like, subscribe, do all those algorithm things. If you want to check out some other book reviews I've got, my playlist is here. Otherwise, thanks very much for joining me. Keep reading.